For thousands of years, Jewish people have lived in many lands. But one question remains. Who are the true descendants of ancient Israel? Are they the Sephardic Jews, who came from Spain and Portugal? Or the Ashkenazi Jews, who settled in Europe? Their history is filled with exile, survival, and mystery. But modern science and history may reveal an unexpected truth. Stay with us as we go deep into this story. You won't want to miss what we uncover. Imagine a man standing beneath a starry sky, staring into the vast unknown. He is alone, yet not alone. A voice, deep and eternal, speaks to him. Look up at the heavens and count the stars. So shall your descendants be. This man is Abraham, the father of a nation yet to be born. His journey would set the course of history, shaping the destiny of an entire people, the people of Israel. Abraham's faith was tested again and again. He left his homeland, wandered through foreign lands, and even stood ready to sacrifice his beloved son Isaac, believing that God had a greater plan. From Isaac came Jacob, a man who wrestled with angels and received a new name, Israel. His 12 sons would become the heads of the 12 tribes of Israel, each carrying a unique identity, yet bound by a shared promise. These tribes flourished in Egypt, but their fate took a dark turn. From honored guests, they became enslaved under the might of Pharaoh. Centuries of suffering followed: chains, whips, and cruel oppression. But just when all seemed lost, a leader arose. Moses, a man raised in the palace of his oppressors, led his people to freedom, crossing the Red Sea into destiny. The Israelites wandered the desert for 40 years, forging their identity in the fire of trials. They received the law at Mount Sinai, establishing a covenant that would define them for generations. Finally, they entered the Promised Land, building a kingdom under kings like David and Solomon, whose wisdom and power were legendary. But history is never kind for too long. The mighty kingdom fell, shattered by invading empires. The Babylonians stormed Jerusalem, burning the sacred temple of Solomon to the ground. The Jewish people were exiled, forced to leave behind their land, their home, their dreams. Yet, exile did not destroy them. Scattered across foreign lands, they held onto their faith, their traditions, and the hope of returning one day. This was only the beginning of a long and painful journey, one that would lead to a question still asked today. Who are the true descendants of Israel? And as we unravel this mystery, the answer may surprise you. Stay with us. The flames rose high above Jerusalem, turning night into day. The Second Temple, the heart of Jewish life, was burning. Roman legions stormed the city, their swords cutting through centuries of faith, tradition, and hope. It was 70 CE, and the world of ancient Israel had shattered. The streets were filled with cries of despair. Families torn apart. Elders whispering prayers as they were dragged away. The Jewish people, once united under one land, were now cast into exile. Some were taken as slaves to Rome, paraded as trophies in chains. Others fled, searching for safety in lands unknown. But wherever they went, they carried something priceless: their identity, their faith, their longing for home. This was the beginning of the great Jewish diaspora. As centuries passed, Jewish communities formed across the world. Some settled in the Middle East and North Africa, blending with the cultures of Persia, Babylon, and the Arab world. Others journeyed westward, finding refuge in Spain and Portugal, where they thrived under Islamic rule. These Jews became known as the Sephardim, named after Sepharad, the Hebrew word for Spain. Meanwhile, another group took a different path. Traveling north, they arrived in the lands of France and Germany, later expanding into Poland, Russia, and Eastern Europe. These Jews became the Ashkenazim, named after Ashkenaz, a biblical term for the Germanic lands. For centuries, these two communities lived worlds apart, developing unique languages, traditions, and customs. The Sephardic Jews spoke Ladino, a beautiful blend of Hebrew and Spanish, while the Ashkenazi Jews created Yiddish, a mixture of Hebrew and German. Their prayers, melodies, and even their food, from matzo ball soup to spiced Sephardic lamb, reflected the lands they called home. But home was a fragile illusion. In 1492, Spain turned against its Jews. The Spanish Inquisition forced them to flee once more, scattering them across North Africa, the Ottoman Empire, and beyond. The Ashkenazi Jews, too, faced relentless persecution. Ghettos, massacres, and forced conversions haunted their existence. Two peoples, one origin. Two histories, one unbreakable bond. But after centuries apart, a question remains. Which of these groups holds the strongest link to ancient Israel? The answer is more complex and more shocking than you might think. Stay with us as we dive deeper. The world was burning again. But this time, it wasn't Roman soldiers tearing down the walls of Jerusalem. It was Spain, the land that had once been a refuge for Jews, now turning into a place of betrayal and suffering. For centuries, Sephardic Jews had flourished in Spain and Portugal. They built grand synagogues, studied philosophy, medicine, and science, and became advisors to kings. Under Islamic rule in Al-Andalus, they thrived, creating what many call the golden age of Jewish culture. It was a time of poetry, art, and deep intellectual thought. Names like Maimonides, the great Jewish philosopher, still echo through history. But peace never lasts. As Christian kingdoms reclaimed Spain, the tide turned. Jealousy, fear, and hatred grew among the rulers and the church. The same Jews who had helped build the nation were now seen as outsiders, a people who did not belong. Then came 1492. The year everything changed. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella issued the Alhambra decree. The Jews must convert to Christianity or leave. Those who refused faced the Spanish Inquisition, a nightmare of torture, forced confessions, and public executions. Families who had lived in Spain for 1,000 years were given a choice: abandon their faith or abandon their home. Thousands left, carrying with them only what they could hold. They wandered to North Africa, the Ottoman Empire, and the Middle East. In cities like Istanbul, Salonika, and Fez, they rebuilt their lives, never forgetting the land they had lost. They spoke Ladino, a mix of Spanish and Hebrew, keeping the memory of Spain alive in their words. But exile was not the end. The Sephardic Jews carried their traditions wherever they went, shaping communities that still thrive today. Their melodies fill synagogues in Israel. Their recipes grace Jewish tables, and their wisdom continues to inspire. Yet, despite their resilience, one question lingers. Are they the true descendants of ancient Israel? Or does that title belong to another group, one that took a different path, through the cold lands of Europe, forging their own destiny? To find out, we must now turn to the Ashkenazi Jews, a people whose journey was just as painful, just as remarkable, and just as tied to the ancient past. As the Sephardic Jews were forced from Spain, another Jewish community, far to the north, was facing its own trials. The Ashkenazi Jews, named after Ashkenaz, an ancient Hebrew word for Germany, had carved out an existence in the cold lands of France, Germany, and Eastern Europe. But their story was one of survival against impossible odds. Unlike their Sephardic brothers who thrived under Islamic rule, the Ashkenazi Jews lived in Christian Europe, where they were seen as outsiders. Suspicion and fear followed them wherever they went. They were forbidden from owning land, pushed into ghettos, and blamed for plagues and disasters. Their very existence became a crime in the eyes of many. From these struggles, a new culture was born. The Ashkenazim developed Yiddish, a language that blended Hebrew with German and Slavic influences. Their traditions, their music, their prayers, everything carried the weight of exile, yet burned with resilience. Some theories suggest that Ashkenazi Jews may have Khazar ancestry, tracing their roots to a Turkic kingdom that converted to Judaism in the Middle Ages. Could they be distant from ancient Israel? Or does their DNA reveal a different story? Through centuries of pogroms, forced expulsions, and the horrors of the Holocaust, the Ashkenazi Jews clung to their identity. And when Israel was reborn, they played a vital role in shaping its destiny. But here lies the ultimate question. Do the Ashkenazi Jews have a stronger link to ancient Israel than the Sephardim? The answer may surprise you. Stay with us as we uncover the truth. For centuries, history told a story of exile, separation, and survival. The Sephardic Jews, scattered across the Mediterranean. The Ashkenazi Jews, struggling through the icy lands of Europe. Two communities shaped by different worlds. But were they still one people? Or had time and distance made them something else? To find the answer, we must turn to something that never forgets: DNA. In recent years, genetic studies have uncovered astonishing connections between Jewish communities across the world. Scientists analyze the Y chromosome, passed down from father to son, and the mitochondrial DNA, inherited from mothers. The results? Both Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jews share common Middle Eastern ancestry, linking them back to an ancient past. One of the most fascinating discoveries is the Cohen modal haplotype, a genetic marker found among the Kohanim, the priestly class of Jews who claim direct descent from Aaron, the brother of Moses. This unique genetic signature appears in both Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jewish men, suggesting a shared lineage that stretches back over 3,000 years. But science also reveals complexity. Studies show that while both groups have deep Middle Eastern roots, they also carry traces of the lands they lived in for centuries. Sephardic Jews have North African and Iberian influences, while Ashkenazi Jews have European and even some Khazar-related genes. This raises a controversial question. Are Ashkenazi Jews partly descended from converts? Or do their Middle Eastern genetic markers prove their connection to ancient Israel? One thing is certain. Neither group is a stranger to the land of their ancestors. Both carry the echoes of Israel in their blood, their traditions, their prayers. But if genetics confirms a shared origin, why do so many still question who the true descendants of Israel are? The answer lies not just in science, but in faith, identity, and history itself. And to truly understand, we must go even deeper. Stay with us. For centuries, Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jews wandered through lands that were not their own. They built new homes, new lives, and new identities. But through it all, one dream never faded: the longing for Israel. When the modern state of Israel was born in 1948, it was more than just the creation of a nation. It was the fulfillment of an ancient promise, the return of a people to their homeland after 2,000 years of exile. But who played the bigger role in shaping this new Israel? And does one group have a stronger claim to being the true descendants of ancient Israel? At the heart of Israel's rebirth stood the Ashkenazi Jews. Many of the founders, including David Ben-Gurion and Theodor Herzl, came from European backgrounds. They led the Zionist movement, built the cities, and established the political and military foundations of the state. The Ashkenazi influence shaped the culture, the economy, and even the Hebrew language as it is spoken today. But the Sephardic Jews also played a vital role. Many had lived in the Middle East for centuries, never fully separated from the land of their ancestors. They carried the traditions, prayers, and customs of the ancient Israelites. As waves of Sephardic Jews arrived, especially from North Africa, the Ottoman lands, and Iran, they brought rich traditions, deep spiritual knowledge, and a fierce devotion to Israel. For decades, there were tensions. Ashkenazi Jews dominated politics, while Sephardic Jews struggled against discrimination. But over time, the lines began to blur. Intermarriage between the two communities increased. Cultural influences merged, and a new Israeli identity was born, one that carried the soul of both Ashkenazi and Sephardic heritage. So, who is more closely tied to ancient Israel? The answer is not one or the other. It is both. The blood of Israel flows through them all, whether they came from Spain or Poland, Persia, or Russia. They are one people, bound by faith, history, and destiny. But despite this unity, the question still lingers. Who are the true descendants of Israel? To find the final answer, we must turn to the most powerful source of all, ancient biblical prophecy. Stay with us. For thousands of years, the Jewish people have walked through fire. They have been exiled, hunted, and scattered across the world. And yet, they remain. From the streets of ancient Jerusalem to the bustling cities of modern Israel, their story is one of unbreakable faith and survival. Whether Sephardic or Ashkenazi, they carry the same ancient prayers, the same sacred traditions, the same deep longing for the land promised to their ancestors. And now, after exploring history, genetics, and prophecy, we must ask, who are the true descendants of Israel? The answer is not found in blood alone. It is not about whether their ancestors lived in Spain, Poland, or Persia. It is not just about DNA or historical records. The true descendants of Israel are those who carry its legacy forward. They are the ones who keep the Torah alive, who cherish the Hebrew language, who celebrate Shabbat and the festivals. They are the ones who build and defend Israel, who pass down the faith to their children, who refuse to let their identity fade. Perhaps the real question was never who was more authentic, but rather, who has never given up? And the answer is clear. They all have endured. Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jews are not two separate peoples. They are branches of the same ancient tree, deeply rooted in the land of Israel. Their history is one of suffering, but also of miracles. And their future? It is still being written. And now we turn the question to you. What do you think? Does lineage define identity, or is it something greater? Let us know in the comments. But before you go, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and stay with us for more untold stories of history.